Each speaker will decide when and how he wants to take questions. Our first speaker is Mr. Warren Norrid, a lawyer, speaking for, I think, Save Our Stadium. Is that correct?
Citizens for a Better Arlington.
Citizens for a Better Arlington. And I'm going to turn it over to him right now.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the group for making an effort to have a balanced position so that everybody has an opportunity to see both sides of this deal. Quite often they're presented as one side and the other side never gets a chance to talk. I'm going to try to speak no more than about 30 minutes and then sometimes you start talking about a subject and you're dealing with all the things that people don't care about. And so I want to make sure I cover the things you care about. So if I don't, make sure that you, at about 30 minutes after, I'll try to stop and make sure I take 10 minutes for questions. I'm with Citizens for a Better Arlington. It's the same group that stopped they got the red light cameras on the ballot. Now you'll notice that whenever we were doing that project, the council decided they didn't need to let the people vote. We had to force that option. But last week, the council decided, oh no, we want to make sure that people get a chance to vote. And so they've given us this opportunity. This is just an example of a number of, and there are millions of these. If you go look on the web, you can find lots of interesting things. This is just showing that people will say, well, you got to pay people what I call the Dane Geld. Everybody know what the Dane Geld is? Dane Geld is what you had to pay the Danes in medieval times to keep them from pillaging your town. And if you pay the Dane, there's an old famous poem, if you pay the Dane Geld once, you'll be paying them forever. And that's the modern Dane Geld. You don't have to pay these people to stick around if you've got a good market. They don't decide where they're going to be by whether or not you give them money, at least not within a certain area. We are a huge market. There's going to be a Major League Baseball team somewhere in this area, and they're here because for a number of reasons. But you'll see Cowboy Stadium's over here. We paid only 63%, or we paid 63% of that was private funding. You may remember that was $350 million. The Rangers Stadium before that was 135. This proposal is more than both of them together. Okay? Now, 20 years ago, I was not particularly a big fan of the Rangers Stadium project. But one thing I never said was, it's a great building. Why would you get rid of it? That's not something you ever heard me say. I would argue the economics of it, but today that's not the case. We have a beautiful building, 48,000 people that sit in it. And while people are saying we have to have a covered roof to get people to come, last Saturday it was 96 degrees and they had 47,000 people, technically a sellout, 47,000 people. Now the new stadium that's proposed, let's go over the basics of it, $1 billion. If it goes to 1.25 or more, then the Rangers can require us to come up with more money or the deal's off. People say any overages belongs to the Rangers to a degree, but 1.25, it trips that. It's going to be about 38,000 seats, give or take. The requirement is 38,000. So by the master agreement that's been signed, that everybody's talking about, is 38,000. You're going to lose 10,000 seats. So last Saturday, there's about 9,000 people that would not have been able to come to this city and sit and watch the game. Okay? This is an indisputable fact. We can talk a lot about magical numbers and everything else, but the new stadium will be on the order of 8,000 to 10,000 fewer seats, and in a time when they're saying we have to have a covered stadium to get people, it's 96 degrees. Now why are people showing up? Because they're winning. Okay, so it turns out if you have a winning team, people will show up. If you don't have a winning team, nobody shows up. That's the bottom line. So, but you don't have to give them this money. Now, I've just got some things I want to make sure I cover while I'm here. People talk about what we're doing, and they'll say, this is not a new tax. That's what you've heard that a million times. No new taxes. This is the actual document that was signed, if I can make it smaller so it's reasonable. And this will have the actual, I hope, if I can get it out to it, maybe not. This is not the one that has the proposal, the proposed start language. And that is sad. Oh, it's here somewhere. But it says to impose certain taxes. No, get it there.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Okay. Yep. Authorizing, if I can just control myself. All right. Authorizing. And let's look at one. To impose a parking tax. Does it say to continue a parking tax? No. It says to impose a parking tax. Number two. Where is number two? Number two. To impose an admissions tax. Doesn't currently exist. Okay. That's in the Rangers. It exists for the Cowboys, but it doesn't exist here. New taxes. Three. To authorize the use of the existing hotel tax, because we currently have a hotel tax, for the purpose of paying off the Ranger Stadium after it goes to the Cowboys. Now people will say, well, come on, Warren, you know what we mean. We're just saying this because it's the same kind of taxes, you're already paying it. Some of you may be on Social Security, okay, and you get a cost of living increase when it's appropriate, and you know this ahead of time. You generally get a notice of this ahead of time. You're disappointed because it's not going to happen, or you're happy it's going to happen. Now, if somebody said, well, you were going to get one next year, but we decided not to give it to you. But don't worry, you're getting the same thing you've got now. Would you be happy? Or would you say, no, I had an expectation it was going to go up. I have an expectation that we would vote on a project, and we're done with that project, it's gone. I did not vote. Even the people who voted yes did not vote to have continuous half-cent sales tax dedicated to whatever the stadium du jour is, ad infinitum for the rest of my life. So it should go away in about 3 years. But it's not. They want to continue on. They want to say, well, because it's the same tax continued on, what are you worried about? You shouldn't be angry at all. Let's just take your income tax. Maybe you're paying 30%, maybe you're paying 20%. We're just going to double it. Don't worry, it's the same tax you've always been paying. Really, I care about these things. I have certain expectations. I have expectations whenever I vote on something, it's going to go away when we're done. Don't tell me it's the same tax if it's going to go away. It should have gone away and it's not. So anyway, that's the reality. Now the funny part is that this admissions tax, we'll say, well, it's a user tax. And I agree to a degree it is a user tax. You have a WrestleMania, national yarning contest, whatever it is, at Rangers Stadium.
Cool.
And people pay that $3 to park. It doesn't pay the Arlington side. It pays the Ranger side. It's not a Ranger event, but it's using Ranger Stadium, whatever we're going to call it at the time. And so it goes to that side. Turns out, now, there was a big media story about this, whether or not it was misleading or not, but this is the fact. All of these other taxes are going to pay the Ranger side. Their actual out-of-pocket is not going to be more than $200 or $300 million. Not going to be, because they're going to get the benefit of all these extra little taxes that we're collecting on their behalf. So you can say, well, that should be there or not, but that's the reality. You can classify it any way you want. That's what that fight's about. But they say, well, we're going to leave. We're going to leave if you don't. Keep the Rangers. That's what they say. Now, when you're renting a house and you leave the lease early, how do you handle that? You've got to either find another renter for the person, your landlord, or you've got to pay the duration of the lease. They can't force you to stay there, right? I mean, that's just the way the law works. You can't move. In these deals, you'll see subchapter G of the Act, 334. If you go look at this Act, the primer bill, it's what allows these things. It specifically says there's something called specific performance. Specific performance, and I'll go lawyer on you just for a few minutes. It means that you got to do what you said you were going to do. You don't get to leave. It would be like leasing, and you have in your lease specific performance. You try to leave. No, we just filed an injunction. You're staying. We gave you a bunch of money. Now I could pull up the law and we could look at it, but it says because these are unique venues with substantial investments by all the people involved in the city, you can't just up and leave us. So we have specific performance. They cannot leave, ladies and gentlemen, for 8 years. 8 years. And yet their campaign says it's all about keeping the Rangers here, as though, man, January 1, they're going to be in Dallas just like that. if we don't give them their money. It's a fantasy. Now, I have a lot of conversations with my friends that are involved in this, and they say, well, you know what we mean, Warren. What it means is it'll open up negotiations with Dallas. Okay, I'm not afraid of that. Do you recall there was this other team that came across the way and joined us in Tarrant County just a decade or so ago? Oh, they're a little known team. I think the Cowboys or rodeo guys or something. Cowboys. It's the Cowboys. Okay, Cowboys got how much? Dallas couldn't raise $350 million. They couldn't raise $350 million. Now people will say, well, Mayor Laura didn't really want him here, and Mayor Laura wasn't all that excited, and that's true. But the fact is, and Brian Mays, on a SoundCloud interview, which you can go look up, as they say, said she didn't have the resources. They can raise $150, $200 million in taxes because they're using their full cent on DART. And everybody knows, okay, we got sales tax. Cities can't just decide to raise whatever they want to raise. They're limited by state law on what they can do. Most cities are at 8 1/4. 8 1/4, you buy something, it's $1, it's $1.08 1/4. Of that amount, if you're at 8 1/4, it's 2 cents stays here, and the rest of it goes to the state. Now for us here in Arlington, we're at 8%, 1.75 cents of the 8 cents stays here. The rest of it goes to Austin, where they blow it however they feel. So, but Dallas has been at a penny for a long time, and they spend a lot of money on mass transit. Now you can decide you like mass transit or not, but I can tell you that once you have mass transit, you are locked in. You will never get rid of it. And because of that, Dallas does not have the money just to go decide, we're just going to raise $500 million, we'll match those guys. They just can't do it. Even if they want to. Even if they want to real bad, they can't do it. So then the story is, well, they're going to crowdsource this. They did this for Meyerson. They can raise this money. Well, they didn't do it for the Cowboys. And they don't do it for every little thing they want. They do it sometimes. But are they going to give all this money to the Rangers, a for-profit organization, or is the Rangers going to stay? Of course, who's involved in this Texas Live thing? Everybody knows they had Texas Live, right? We got Texas Live is going to be this set of property that's being developed around the ballparks. Who's heavily invested in that?
The Rangers.
The Rangers team ownership, amazingly enough. So what the proponents of this are expecting you to believe is that even though these guys are heavily invested in all the property around here, and even though these guys are not going to get $500 million from Dallas, and even though we have, okay, leases for 8 years, right? And Warren, it takes some time to do your planning and to get your stadium. So yeah, it's not going to be forever. It's not going to be literally tomorrow, but you've got to plan this stuff ahead. Okay, let's just say that we take the next 3 years. You got a May 17 vote, regular scheduled election. You got a May 18 vote, regular scheduled election. You can have a primary, another general, and another city election. We have at least 6 elections regularly scheduled in the next 2 or 3 years where we could come back at 350, or we can come back at 200, we can come back at whatever we want to do. We could run an election every time there's an opportunity at $50 million dropping every time until it passes and have no problem. They are not going to leave in January. It's a fantasy. Let's look at some other things. You have, where's my cursor? What's the cursor? There it is. There is some of you maybe have seen this sports bump. This was reported. Where'd it go? Okay, gotta move that. This is always fun. Oh, here we go. This was my friend Andrew Peel talks about this a lot. This is in the Dallas Morning News, and it's what you get. And it shows, oh look, Cowboy Stadium opens, Rangers make World Series, and you think, wow, this is a huge deal. Look at that number, it spikes, it's crazy. Okay, that's real, but what is it? It's sales in arts and entertainment and recreation. It's not all taxable sales. But let's see if we can reproduce those numbers, because what I always like to do is to see if I can find the numbers that people like to get. So let's see what we can do. And how do we get these numbers? We go to the state comptroller's office, and you can go to them and you can say, hey, I can't see what's going on down there. And you can see, this is by quarter. And here we go. If we do arts by year, this is that red line is Arlington. That's the same line we just saw, the sports bump. Same line. That's longer, right? But it's the same line. That's how they get that. Let's look at all the other cities. It seems like a lot of cities have had bumps. This is what the proponents do, and I want you to understand that I don't have any problem recognizing that when the Rangers are doing well. Let's do arts chart by quarter. Every fourth quarter goes down. This is by quarter, not by year, so it looks different. These are all the other cities. Red's Arlington. Fourth quarter, didn't dip here and here. What's going on? Rangers World Series. It's a big deal in arts and entertainment. Arts and entertainment. If you're having a discussion with somebody and they won't give you a single point, even when you're obviously right, you know that you have a problem. I'm happy to give them this. Okay, let's look at all of the. Let's see, can I do this? This is all versus arts. And what I did is I normalized this. In other words, I just started, I think, in 1994. I divided everything by the numbers in 1994, so I can just see how it varies from year to year. Okay. Now, I know some of my friends don't like this chart because it exaggerates this. This is actually a small number, and I'll show it to you in a minute. This number is about 10% of this number. It's just showing the variety. This is showing the actual total sales tax variation over the year. So you have a little bump here, look at that, a little bump here, a little bump there. Otherwise, it's pretty flat, slowly increasing, nothing special, but it's there. So does it have an impact? Do you think maybe, maybe not? Let's see. Let's see if we compare it to all sales tax charts. Well, look at that.
Oh, look at
This is red. This is us. If I can get this over so you can see the legend. Maybe not. Just can't do that.
It's the bottom scroller. Bottom.
There we go. So this is Arlington, and these are the little bumps. Turns out everybody had a bump. Isn't that funny? When you look at people's charts, you have to look at them very closely and say, what are you reporting to me, and what are you not reporting to me? They leave this out. The fuller picture is that we follow the trend line just like everybody else. Who is this? This is purple. Travis County. Travis County is having the same bump that we are, largely. There are trends, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not going to say that the Cowboys doing or the Rangers doing well doesn't impact that trend a little bit. You affect climate change by being here. This much, okay? It's this much. It's not a lot. It's not worth $500 million. We can do a lot with $500 million. What else do I have to show you before I in my show and tell? It's okay. We will here. This is where if you want to check my numbers, and I'm back when I was a useful member of society, I was an engineer, and then I turned to the dark side and became an attorney. You can go to this website, and you can put in all the industries, and you enter the city down here. Okay, I'm struggling here. You can go down to the city name, all industries, and you can get these numbers. And you can put the numbers in your own chart, and you can recreate these numbers. You don't have to depend upon the Dallas Morning News or keep the Rangers guys to tell you what the numbers are. Now, one of the numbers you hear a lot is, well, Rangers, visitors are going to pay half the sales tax anyway, so what's the big deal? Well, first of all, it doesn't help me a lot if you take a bunch of money from me. If you say, well, don't worry, I'm taking money from everybody. Like, I'm not sure how that's supposed to help me. But let's look at that. What we did was we looked at, and I'm not going to redo the entire calculation, but we looked at the 2014 financial report, which you can get. This is called the Wayback Machine. You can look way back, and that's why it's called the Web Archive. 2014 budget, you can look at down here, it'll talk about the reports. What actually happened in 2014? How much did we get in sales taxes in 2014? You can look at it. The Convention and Visitors Bureau told us how much money we brought in visitors in 2014. We can look at the amount of money we brought in sales tax. We can say we keep 1.75 out of the 8%. Remember that? Multiply it by the amount of money that came in through the city in sales tax, and we know what the visitors paid. We know. And I've gone through excruciating detail on our website, and I welcome you to go to that, Save Our Stadium and Citizens for Better Arlington. And it's about 21%. It's 21%. Now, I was talking to the mayor this afternoon, and he said, Warren, what are you talking about? Only 20%. It's full. Really? I remember the Rangers filed bankruptcy. Stadiums were full. Okay? Just because something is full does not mean it's making money. Okay? Just because you see things that have a lot of business does not mean it's making money. This city is a lot more than the two stadiums. I'm happy about the stadiums. I like being known for these stadiums. That's cool. But is it $500 million cool? Or what if I can get it for $350? The same amount that I paid for the Cowboys. What do we get with the Cowboys? We got a new team. We got a brand new team. We got something serious out of that. It was a big cost, but it was still something we got something. We got something for that. What are we getting for this? We have a $200 million stadium and it's really worth that. It's really worth that. And we're going to replace it with a smaller stadium. Okay. And what else about it? Taxpayers are on the hook to pay the utilities on the new air conditioning. It's in the master service agreement. Okay, it's in there. They have to pay their loan first, and they have to pay the lease. But after that, the sales money goes to pay for the air conditioning. Oh my. Okay, so what else bugs me about this? David Schwartz. David Schwartz is the design architect of the current stadium. He also does some other things. The tulips that are kind of bloom in Sundance Square. That's David Schwartz as well. American Airlines Center in Dallas, that's David Schwartz. New courthouse building in Fort Worth, that's David Schwartz. He has done some things, okay? He's not a slouch. Have they talked to him? Morning News or the Star Telegram did a story, they haven't talked to him. Now, the mayor says that they've talked to him today. Not today, but today the mayor told me that they had spoken to him. And he tried to excuse this by saying, well, he's the design architect. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if I were having a fight, or not a fight, I was having a discussion with my wife about how to, usually, which means I'm going to lose, right? To add a room onto my house. And the architect who did the design lived just down the street. And he featured my house in his website about how great it was. And he's personal friends. And I said, or my wife said to me, well, have you asked David about it? David's going to tell me something that he doesn't know. Really? Okay, so the guy who's just down the street that knows about this and is world class by any measurement, you haven't bothered to pick up the phone and call. What does that tell you? That tells me that you don't want to hear the answer. Okay, there are other ways of doing this. Even if we assume that we're not going to fill the stands, even if we assume that we're not going to get these first-rate pitchers that feel like they've got to have air conditioning, take all of that assumptions aside, wouldn't you at least talk to the guy who knows something about this before just deciding, nah, it's too expensive to put a roof on? Maybe it is, but the Coliseum was putting a shaded, retractable roof on the Coliseum 2,000 years ago. We may have a way of doing that. And then they'll say, well, it'll interfere with gameplay. You can put the struts up one season. You can construct this. I mean, I'm not an architectural engineer, but I know that what I know whenever I hear the answers I'm being given is that there was a decision made, and everything else is backfill. Everything else is backfill. What else do I got to say here before I? Oh, $77 million a year. We have $77 million a year of impact. It's impact. What is impact? It's just money that's been going through. Well, if the Rangers were not here, would that money just disappear? Would we say, oh, I'm not going to spend this money, I'm just going to burn it in my furnace? No, we would not. We would still spend it on some other form of entertainment. So would that impact would go to other forms of entertainment. In fact, right now, what you can say, without a doubt, is what's happening right now is that we are taking money out of the private sector and we're moving it to concession stands in Cowboy Stadium. Of course, that's where the asset's going to right now, right? So we would be spending money, all of us would be spending the $100 to $200 a year on other forms of entertainment. And what that really does in economic terms is if you look in your billfold and say, I wanted to go spend $20 for a lunch, but instead I'm only going to spend $15 and I'm bummed. You don't really notice the money. But the economy altogether does recognize that there's a lack of money. Instead of you spending $20 for a blouse at Target, you're going to go to Walmart. Instead of going to eat at a nicer place, you go eat a slightly lesser place. Because you have to. Even if you don't recognize it, you just don't have the money. Now, what do people in leadership in Arlington, they're always complaining, we need more high-end shops. Asher's in South Cooper, out of business. What do? It sold really expensive kitchen stuff for your wife's birthday, right? That's what I always use it for, and it's gone today. Well, am I going to sit here and say that it would still be here if we didn't have the stadiums? That's not what I'm saying. And if you hear any ex-mayors running around with maps of things that the Cowboys have done or the Rangers have done and created, I want you to remember that there are dozens of businesses that have gone out of business in the last 20 years. Dozens of them. I asked about this on Facebook, and I got a long list. It was about 100 comments long. There's a great Mediterranean restaurant that's not too far from where the stadium used to be. Okay, Mediterranean restaurant. It used to be there. I forgot the name of it. But it was nice. It's gone. And that leads you to, well, what about all this economic nirvana? We were promised economic nirvana 20 years ago. We got cheap apartments in North Arlington. How many nice luxury hotels do you have? You got some stuff over on Lamar, but is it what they promised us? No, it's not. What is Texas Live? Well, they're going to be real proud about that. It's going to be nice. Texas Live is going to be nice. $50 million of taxpayer dollars is going to go to that. It reminds me of the Soviet Politburo saying, well, we're going to get it right this time. All we need is another $50 million. $50 million. I don't know. This is the deal. If you're going to have a restaurant, what do you want? You want constant foot traffic. You want it full as often as possible. You don't want it super full every fourth day. That's a recipe for a dead restaurant that doesn't survive. You get Humperdinck's over there. That's about it. When I used to come here from Six Flags, when I was a kid in Oklahoma City, and we'd come here every summer, we'd go to Six Flags. We'd go to the Steak and Ale. It was hanging on by a thread for decades across the street from Six Flags. It's a death knell to be close to those places. And they had an entire season of hot weather that was nice. An entire season they couldn't make it. We're in the Highlands is doing very well. It's not close to a ballpark. How can that be? How can they be? How can they be doing well without any ballpark to get them? Because you don't want that. You want constant foot traffic to succeed as a restaurant. It's never going to be great up there. And they keep saying, well, we need one more ballpark, one more stadium. They'll give us one more set of things. There's always going to be a few more things, okay? But the Cowboys, at least, can use their facility for a lot of other things. You can use it for WrestleMania. You can use it for the big truck pulls and things like that. You can't use a ballpark for that in the same way. It's just not there. It isn't done. Other things. You'll notice whenever I give you a number, I'll tell you how to reproduce it. When I was a young engineer, people said, I want you to assume everything on my piece of paper as you review it is wrong. Reproduce it. I was working at ABM, nuclear power. We wanted it to be right. I wanted people to find my errors, because that's what a responsible fiduciary does. The city says, well, it's too expensive to put a roof on. Really? Where's your study? It's going to be all this money that's raised from the foreigners. Show me that study. Well, Visa did it for us. It shows 5248. Okay, so let's just take that for a minute. How many foreign students at UTA? 10,000? 15,000? How many of them have non-Arlington billing addresses? Got a bunch of them. They spend a lot of money. All that money is counted as though they don't live here, as though they're not here. How about every franchise that buys paper for its printers that has a billing address outside Arlington? Only about a jillion of them. Okay. I have no doubt that there are some sales taxes get paid for by foreigners, people outside Arlington. But it's nothing like what they want to say. So, we talked about the substitution effect, right? That if we have the $77 million go away, that's not really going to go away. We're just going to spend it somewhere else. Their studies are not doing it. We have more revenue, more growth in South than the North. We talked about restaurant struggle. What am I missing?
The complaint.
Oh, the complaint. We filed a complaint a couple days ago. There are laws about elections, and you have to say things that are true. You can exaggerate it a little bit and get away with it. And in fact, the Ranger side may get away with it this time. I don't know. My job in life is to someday die being proud of the things I did, or at least not too embarrassed by the things I did while I was here. It's not to go along, get along. It's not to barely follow the rules. And you'll see this, and I'm on JPS Hospital Board, and we do this a lot. We're going to comply with the Open Meetings Act to the T. But if somebody calls me and say, hey, what about this? How are you going to vote here? It's against the spirit of the Open Meetings Act. Okay, it just is. If you want to be a responsible person who represents everybody, you negotiate in the open. You do the things the right way. So what is this? If you have a proposal before the people, you come out and you be honest with it. It's going to raise this much in taxes. The proposal we looked at, does it talk about the $500 million anywhere?
Nope.
No, it doesn't. It refers to Resolution 16-090. All you got to do is be really good with Google. It took me minutes and minutes to find that, but a lot of people wouldn't get it. You have to go search the minutes to find it, where it's $500 million. Now, is it limited to the $500 million? Maybe, but we already know that we've seen it already. It's the same tax you've always had. So 20 years from now, when we have personal drones and it's time to redo the stadium, it's going to be, that's the same tax as you've always paid. You should just sign up for it. This no new taxes stuff is simply not true, right? I showed you to impose at least 2 new taxes. Isn't that picky? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I do know that it doesn't comport with the law. The law says you have to be at least reasonably truthful. It doesn't use those words, but that's the way it's really kind of enforced. So anyway, we filed a Texas Ethics Commission complaint to say, look, you're doing this the wrong way. Now, the proposal does not authorize bonds directly. It refers to another resolution. If you just read this, though, and you didn't know, if you just kind of came in from Dallas or just an ordinary lawyer and you said, what's going on here? I'm going to raise five taxes: sales tax, admissions tax, hotel tax, rental tax,
Parking.
and parking. Okay, I'm going to raise 5 taxes, and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to build a stadium. Is that what we're doing? No, that's not what we're doing. We're borrowing $500 million, and we're going to use this income stream to service it and pay off the debt. That's not what it says. It's just not what it says. It doesn't tell you that. It just doesn't tell you that. Now, is somebody trying to deliberately deceive you? I don't know. I'm not suggesting that it is. I'm just suggesting that I suspect somebody didn't want to see the number $500 million in this proposal. That might hurt its ability to get past everybody. But let's talk about the way this was, and I'll take questions. 12 years ago, the city council announced we got a Cowboys deal. They did it in record fashion, and it was on the general election. Why is it on the general election?
Presidential.
Because it's the presidential election. Who votes in general elections? Everybody. People that don't know beans, don't know sales taxes, they don't know. They're wandering in, where do I vote? Okay? Are these good people? They're good people. Okay? That's not the point. The point is they are the lowest information voters. You know, some of us are geeks, right? Everybody in this room, you understand, everybody in this room is weird because you're involved at this level. It's a good weird,
Yes.
so I'm not saying anything bad, but most people aren't like you. They just aren't. And so that's what happens. Now, amazingly, 12 years later, 4 days after at least one person gets sworn in, or that 4 or 5, I guess after she wins her election,
Yes.
before she's sworn in, first vote on that. And now we have to hurry up and get this all approved so we can get it on the general election. So this didn't happen. There was no discussion about this during the city council elections, right? We had a whole cycle. Nobody talked beans about it. Oh, we're going to be strong fiduciaries, and that's about it. It's disingenuous at best to say that this just coincidentally came out in this way. It begs credulity. Thank you. To say that, I have a hard time with that, and I think any reasonable person should be able to see through that. It's very, dubious. I got about 5 minutes apparently, so I would like to answer any questions that somebody might have. Yes?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One, do you know why the stadium is proposed to be smaller or seat fewer people? And secondly, do you know how this Texas Live compares to the Glory Park proposal that never actually happened?
I'll take the first question was
Okay.
the, which one was it?
The seating.
Why it's smaller?
Oh, smaller.
Do you know why it's
Okay,
smaller?
things go in fads. They go back and forth. So it is a style that people are doing now. You know, George Bush decided it was not going to have a roof, right? That was a decision that he essentially made. And I'm not joking. He wanted an iconic, traditional ballpark. People are saying, well, most people don't show up for those, and you can have more people show up, and you can do things, and you can. And the real answer is you can saddle the taxpayers with that cost. So it's a free thing to do. And when you start saying, well, what about the 9,000 people that would have not been able to go to the event last Saturday? Well, they'll say, well, there'll be other events that they can go to, and we'll get more attendance generally, so it'll make up for it. That's their excuse, and it may or may not be
So
true.
there's no practical reason like they don't have enough space on the site or something like that?
No, I think that they don't want to mess with it. This is straightforward economics. Team owners know that they can demand this of cities, and city councils just bend over to give them whatever they want. They just bow and say and scrape whatever you can do. And that's just it's what happens. And so you have to have some real intestinal fortitude in your city leadership to take that away. As far as the Glory, you know.
Texas Live versus Glory Park. I mean, first of all, do you?
I'm familiar with this. This is what I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with lots of promises all the time, and whenever a politician talks, I barely listen. Okay, it's just talk. It's just talk. What I know is the team ownership is involved with owning some of the property and very involved in Texas Live.
But wouldn't that be the same property that they already own or surrounding the stadium that was supposedly for all these new high-end condominiums and stuff for, at that time it was called Glory Park.
I believe that's
About
correct.
8 years ago.
There may be other people that can answer that better, but there's always a big plan. You look at the banner that's on some of the proponents' websites, and you know it shows the new and the old stadium next to each other, right? If you just look at the drawings, okay, it says very clearly in master agreement that they can tear all that down. You know, the usual question I get is, what about the offices? We don't know is the real answer. They can keep them or they can tear them all down. It's up to them. That's in the agreement. They can do that. Any other questions before I get cut off? Yes.
Going back to when they built the current stadium, weren't they able to, as a result of the increase in sales taxes that they received from the people coming in to see the game, were they not able to pay off the stadium early, I believe?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay. It is a good thing to pay off debt. Okay, but the fact is that our bonds rating went down when we took on all the debt, and now it's going back up because we're paying it off. When we plan these things, we have to plan them conservatively. You will rarely see an organization that pays these things off slower than they're intended. You have a serious failure when that happens. It's just not a big deal. But this is what you need to understand. We're lending the city's credit to finance somebody else's stuff. It's kind of like your niece Sally calling you up and saying, Aunt Sue, I need a new car. I want you to be a co-signer. Okay, and so you say, no big deal, doesn't cost me anything, so you co-sign on it. And if everything goes right, your available credit goes down a little bit, your credit rating goes down a little bit. If everything goes right, it comes back up when they pay it all off. Okay, but to say that it has no impact or it's free is wrong. It has an impact. It impacts your ratings. Yes, ma'am. I think it's the last one.
The tax on the parking tickets and the game tickets and everything, and in the previous ballpark, was there any part of that went to pay off our part? Because am I correct in saying that in the proposed stadium, that tax will be going to the Rangers to pay on their part, not anything to do with the city?
The new tax will go to pay the Rangers part, yes.
Was it that way in the old stadium?
The answer is I don't know.
I believe there was.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. So,
But it means that whatever tax is imposed goes to the Rangers, not to help us pay our
right.
part.
The reason we take so much umbrage at this is that these were supposed to be designed to help the city pay its side, and what it's turned into is it's turned into paying the Ranger side. If somebody wants to say that the city is only paying half of the bonds because of the way it's structured, that's a colorable argument in the law. It means that you can say that, but the reality is the Rangers itself, they've got a couple $100 million out of pocket.
So
That's all
what
they
are the
have.
utilities besides the air conditioner is the city going to be stuck for?
It's all of it.
All
It's
of
all
it?
of it.
Water.
But that only happens after they make their payments. I mean, there's some things that have to happen, but it's always going to happen. These things are designed so they pay off early. So we're gonna take care of all these things plus some. I think I'm being cut off very politely.